Mr. Coleman had always prided himself on being a perceptive man. He believed he could read faces as easily as headlines on a newspaper, the smirk of a prankster, the downcast eyes of a child who had trouble at home, the mask of bravado a struggling bully wore. He had spent 7 years as the principal of Sycamore Middle, and those years sharpened his instincts. Yet on a crisp fall morning, when he called Liam Moore into his office for another detention slip, a nagging sense that something was terribly off lodged itself in Mr. Coleman's mind. Liam was not the typical troublemaker. He was a slight, polite, soft-spoken boy with worn sneakers and a gentle manner. His posture curled inward, as if he wished the walls would swallow him up. That day, Mr. Coleman saw the slightest flicker in his eyes, something that looked like relief. It was an odd expression for a kid receiving a detention. Mr. Coleman escorted Liam inside and closed the door. Silence hung between them. "You know why you're here," Mr. Coleman said, gesturing for Liam to sit. The boy settled into the chair, shoulders rigid. A look of expectation, not dread, clouded his face. The principal flipped open the thin file that contained Liam's recent record. Minor infraction after minor infraction. Tardiness, missing a homework assignment, carrying a cell phone in class. All of them had resulted in detention. None of them were serious. In fact, they looked suspiciously deliberate, as though Liam had carefully orchestrated them. After a deep sigh, Mr. Coleman asked, "Is there something you want to tell me, Liam?" The boy kept his eyes trained on the floor. "No, sir," he said. "Just messed up again, I guess." 3 times in the last 2 weeks, Mr. Coleman noted. "You're either getting sloppy, or you're doing this on purpose." Liam's cheeks colored, and he offered only a half-hearted shrug in reply. Mr. Coleman decided not to push the matter just yet. He scribbled the obligatory slip, indicating another hour after school, even though every instinct told him there was far more to the story. After Liam left, Mr. Coleman pressed his fingertips to his temples. He remembered when he first met Liam in the hallway that semester. The boy had been scurrying between classes, never late, never idle. Polite greetings, quiet manner, the kind of student who rarely fell under the disciplinary radar. Yet here Liam was, stacking up detentions as though they were stepping stones on a path leading anywhere but home. When the final bell rang that day, Mr. Coleman stayed late, wanting to see what shape Liam took in after-school detention. He peeked through the open door of the detention room, observing Liam. The boy seemed oddly calm, finishing some math homework or doodling on scrap paper, betraying no anxiety about the punishment. Mr. Coleman felt the pit in his stomach twist again. He had seen rebellious kids, defiant kids, kids who pretended not to care, but Liam was different. He looked relieved. That night, Mr. Coleman drove home replaying the day's events in his mind. His wife, Harriet, greeted him in the kitchen, and he barely managed a smile in return. She was used to him returning from school in deep thought. "Tough day?" she asked. He nodded, explained briefly about the quiet boy who kept landing in detention for small infractions. Harriet frowned thoughtfully. "He wants to stay after school, maybe? Could be something at home he's trying to avoid." "That's exactly what worries me," Mr. Coleman said. "I can't explain it, but I feel something's not right." His voice trailed off, and Harriet gave his shoulder a squeeze. She'd seen him in these moods before. Once he picked up a scent of danger or injustice, he was like a bloodhound. She knew he wouldn't let it go. That night, he stared into his plate at dinner, mind churning with questions. Why would a boy like Liam, who seemed so gentle, be so determined to rack up detentions? The next day, the conflict stirred even more. Mr. Coleman found time between the morning announcements and his administrative duties to rifle through old records in the counseling office. There wasn't much in Liam's file, just standard transcripts from the past couple of years. But one detail stood out. Liam was a foster child, placed with the Weller family about 8 months ago. The home had a father, a mother, and a teenage son, Dean. Mr. Coleman's eyebrows rose. He remembered Mr. Weller from a few formal gatherings. He had a firm handshake and wore pressed suits, the kind of man who projected a pristine family image. The mother, Mrs. Weller, was often quiet but seemed pleasant enough. Dean was older, likely in high school by now. Nothing about them, from those brief encounters, had ever struck him as suspicious. He dug deeper. In the notes from Liam's old school, he found references to mild anxiety, a mention that Liam was a shy but academically capable student. Then he spotted something curious. An older teacher from Liam's previous school had once suggested a home visit, citing concerns that Liam had arrived to class with bruises. The documentation ended abruptly, concluding there was no evidence of abuse. Mr. Coleman's stomach knotted. Too often, red flags went ignored in a system already stretched thin. He felt an urgency building inside him. He was determined not to let this slip by. Later that week, he pulled Liam aside in the hallway. "Hey, mind if we talk?" he asked gently. Liam nodded, eyes flickering between curiosity and dread. They retreated to the privacy of Mr. Coleman's office, a cozy space lined with motivational posters and pictures from school fundraisers. Mr. Coleman tried to break the ice by asking about Liam's interests. The boy admitted he liked chess and reading sci-fi books, though he didn't have much time to indulge those interests lately. Mr. Coleman gradually steered the conversation toward home life. "How are things at the Wellers? Everything going okay?" he asked, scanning Liam's expression. "They're fine," Liam said, voice wavering just enough for Mr. Coleman to notice. "Mr. Weller works a lot. Mrs. Weller's usually busy with errands. Dean's older, so I don't see him much." But Mr. Coleman caught the way Liam's fingers gripped the arm of the chair. The boy was hiding something, or he was too scared to reveal it. Either way, Mr. Coleman's suspicion grew. For now, he let Liam go and made a note to watch him more closely. 3 more weeks passed, and an unsettling pattern emerged. Each Friday, Liam found a reason to earn detention. Mr. Coleman started paying attention not just to Liam's infractions, but to the timing. Liam always orchestrated some small wrongdoing on Thursday or Friday morning, guaranteeing at least 1 hour of after-school detention that day. It was too consistent to be a coincidence. Mr. Coleman paced the corridors at dismissal, noticing that Liam lingered around the building as if it were a safe haven. One day, Mr. Coleman decided to discreetly observe Liam's journey home. He left school a half hour after the final bell, trailing behind in his car. He watched Liam exit the building, glance around nervously, and trudge toward the bus stop. Something about the boy's posture radiated dread. His shoulders tensed as if bracing for a blow. Mr. Coleman's heart clenched. He didn't want to overstep boundaries by following too closely, so he soon turned down a side street. But it was enough to confirm his suspicion that the ride home for Liam was fraught with anxiety, not relief. The next Monday, Mr. Coleman requested an informal meeting with the Wellers. Mr. Weller arrived promptly, shaking the principal's hand with practiced confidence. Mrs. Weller was absent, busy at work, and that struck Mr. Coleman as odd, but he let it slide. He explained Liam's recent detentions, his concerns about the boy's emotional state, carefully phrasing it so as not to accuse them of anything. Mr. Weller chuckled it off, attributing Liam's behavior to adjustment issues. "He's a bit shy," Mr. Weller said with a cool smile. "We run a strict household, but only to help him develop discipline. I can assure you, Principal Coleman, there's nothing more to it. Liam's a good boy, but he can be anxious." When asked about bruises or any signs of conflict with Dean, Mr. Weller waved it away. "Dean's a typical teenager. He teases Liam, but it's harmless. Boys will be boys, you know. There's no reason for alarm. If anything, we keep a close eye on them to ensure everything stays appropriate." Mr. Coleman tried to read Mr. Weller's expression. It was calm, unwavering. Still, he sensed an underlying tension. He decided to let the matter rest for the moment, but as Mr. Weller left, Mr. Coleman watched the man's rigid posture, the way he carried himself, and thought, "That's a man who wants control." His gut told him that there was more beneath that veneer of composure. Time marched on. Autumn leaves turned vibrant shades of gold and crimson, drifting across the school's courtyard. The hustle of mid-semester activities, fall festivals, parent-teacher conferences, swept up most of the staff's attention. Yet Mr. Coleman could not forget Liam. In the cafeteria, he noticed the boy seldom sat with others. Sometimes, Mr. Coleman found him eating alone in the library. Mr. Coleman also kept hearing rumors. A few students mentioned that Liam had a weird schedule on weekends, never accepting invitations to hang out or do projects together. A teacher, Ms. Clark, quietly confided to Mr. Coleman that she had overheard Liam stammering excuses whenever classmates tried to plan Saturday meetups. The steady drip of clues formed a puddle of doubt in Mr. Coleman's mind. He started to piece together a bigger picture. Liam dreaded weekends. He dreaded going home, or possibly dreaded an interaction with Dean. No matter how strong the facade, it was only a matter of time before something gave way. And indeed it did. 2 Fridays before winter break, the tension escalated. Liam stumbled into the main office with a split lip just before the first bell. Startled, Mr. Coleman rushed to him. "What happened?" he asked, eyes scanning Liam's face. The boy avoided eye contact, muttering some excuse about tripping on the way to school. Mr. Coleman wanted more details, but Liam clammed up. The principal's eyes flicked to the row of lockers outside the office, suspecting an altercation. Some kids did jostle and push each other around in that early morning chaos, but he strongly doubted that a random shove had left Liam so shaken. Liam insisted he was fine, apologized for the inconvenience, and scurried away. By lunchtime, rumors were swirling. Someone had seen Dean Weller near the school that morning, lurking by the gym doors. Another said Dean had been waiting for Liam with a sneer on his face. Others claimed they saw Liam's arms pinned behind him, but no one had stepped in. Mr. Coleman's chest tightened with anger. If Dean was bullying Liam right on school grounds, that crossed a line. By the time the final bell rang, Mr. Coleman was determined to get a clearer picture. He called Liam in for a private talk, but the boy seemed unnaturally calm, as if he had prepared a script in his mind. Every question about Dean he deflected. "There's nothing wrong," Liam repeated. "It was just an accident." Mr. Coleman stared at the boy's bandaged lip, frustration gnawing at him. Why wouldn't Liam speak up? That evening, Mr. Coleman placed a discreet call to Child Protective Services. He had never been one to leap into official actions lightly, but the dread in Liam's eyes and the suspicious incidents compelled him. The initial response was polite but non-committal. The Wellers, after all, had no history of formal complaints, and from a paperwork standpoint, the household appeared stable. The CPS representative thanked him for his concern and said they would make a note of it. Mr. Coleman hung up, feeling uneasy. Days stretched into a week, and the first visit from a social worker finally happened. Mr. Weller politely guided them through the immaculate home, showed them the well-stocked fridge, the neat bedrooms, the tidy living room. Dean was present, greeting them with the respectful politeness of a well-rehearsed teenager. Liam, though shy, did not say anything alarming. The social worker left with no immediate findings of abuse or neglect. Mr. Coleman heard the outcome the following day and felt anger boil inside him. How easy it was for an abusive situation to hide behind perfect curtains and polished floors. But lacking proof, there was little more that could be done, officially. The weekend after that, Mr. Coleman caught sight of Liam slipping out of the library around noon on Saturday, even though the school was closed except for a staff meeting. He confronted the boy in the parking lot, startled to see him there. Liam's startled eyes darted around, as though he were a cornered rabbit. The principal gently asked, "Why are you here, Liam? School's not open for students on weekends." Liam's lips trembled. He managed a weak excuse about needing to retrieve a book. Mr. Coleman exhaled a tense breath, knowing it was not the whole truth. He glanced toward the main road and noticed a familiar figure leaning against a car. He had an unreadable expression on his face, arms crossed over his chest. The older boy spotted Mr. Coleman, scowled, and stepped into the vehicle. It sped off a moment later. "Did something happen between you two?" Mr. Coleman asked, voice low and kind. Liam shook his head fervently. "No, sir. I'm fine." He may have been fine physically, but he was definitely afraid. Mr. Coleman felt a surge of protectiveness. He remembered his own childhood, a father who worked too many hours, a mother who tried to hold the household together, and an older brother who sometimes took out frustrations on him. But never had it been so dire that he would hide at school on weekends. The principal realized that what was happening to Liam had gone beyond pranks or sibling squabbles. As the December cold grew sharper, so did the tension. Every time Liam stepped through the school doors on Monday morning, he looked more exhausted than before. Subtly, Mr. Coleman arranged for the guidance counselor, Ms. Alvarez, to chat with Liam at lunch, but the boy gave only curt, guarded answers. He avoided revealing anything concrete, and Ms. Alvarez later told Mr. Coleman it felt like speaking to a locked door. All the while, Mr. Weller maintained cordial communication with the school, though he seemed a bit vexed by the repeated calls for updates. He sent emails that brimmed with polite annoyance. He assured Mr. Coleman that everything was fine, that Liam was simply sensitive, that the family had a system of discipline that might seem strict but was always fair. Mr. Coleman bristled at those words. In his experience, whenever the word discipline was couched in those terms, it hinted at something more severe. But still, suspicion alone couldn't topple the Wellers' carefully constructed facade. The only direct sign that something sinister was at play came from a cryptic conversation with Ms. Clark, one of Liam's teachers. She confided that she had phoned Mr. Weller once to discuss a group project Liam missed. "He was polite, but I had the strangest feeling," Ms. Clark said, her brow creased. "I heard someone in the background, maybe Dean, yelling about something. It didn't sound like normal teenage complaining, it sounded ugly. Then Mr. Weller snapped at me to hold on, and I heard him scold Dean, telling him to keep it down, or something like that. When he got back on the phone, it was like nothing had happened. He told me how they have this color-coded chart for Liam's chores and Dean's chores. The second I asked about it, he grew cagey." Mr. Coleman's expression darkened. "A color-coded chart?" "Yeah, a behavior chart, apparently. Red marks mean trouble, green means success, something like that." The way Mr. Weller described it, it sounded normal on the surface, but he was so abrupt about it. Ms. Clark paused, sighed. "I'm just telling you because you've asked about Liam. I don't want to overstep. But that yelling in the background, it unsettled me." After Ms. Clark left, Mr. Coleman stared at the note he had scribbled. "Red marks on the weekends." The rumor about that chart lingered in his mind. If weekends were riddled with red marks for Liam, no wonder the boy was terrified. He felt the weight of that unspoken dread more heavily than ever. The new year arrived, and with it came the hush of winter over Sycamore Middle. Snow drifted in sporadic flurries, and the returning students brought fresh energy. Yet the pattern continued. Each Friday, Liam found a reason, any reason, to stay. He'd break a minor rule, land in detention, and remain in the warmth of the school until late. After repeated tries to extract the truth from Liam, Mr. Coleman finally realized the direct approach would not work. Liam was too afraid, too loyal, or too uncertain to reveal the real reason. Maybe he feared retribution from Dean if he spoke out. Maybe he believed no adult could truly help him. Mr. Coleman had seen it in other abused children. The sense that it was safer to remain silent than to risk making a bad situation worse. Undeterred, Mr. Coleman placed a second, more urgent call to Child Protective Services. He cited the repeated pattern, the bruise, the split lip, the fear in Liam's demeanor. This time, the complaint prompted a more thorough inquiry, one spurred on by the fact that a teacher from Liam's previous school had flagged a similar worry. Mr. Coleman didn't know that teacher personally, but the short note in Liam's file referenced a concern about bruises on his arms and suspicious explanations. That older teacher's name was Ms. Jefferson, who apparently had tried to push for some action months before, albeit unsuccessfully. Combined with Mr. Coleman's present concerns, it was enough to garner official attention. By late January, the second investigation was underway. This time, the social worker, Ms. Radcliffe, was more thorough. She interviewed staff at Sycamore Middle, gleaning details about Liam's recent behavior changes, his refusal to talk about home, the uneasy rumors about Dean. She visited the Weller household twice, unannounced, to catch them off guard. Though the house was tidy and calm, she spotted subtle signs. Locked doors that made no sense, Liam's bedroom arranged in a way that suggested minimal personal items. He had no photos on the walls, no sign of hobbies. For a boy who said he liked chess and reading, that was peculiar. Dean loomed in the background of one visit, silent and watchful, a near-adult presence that radiated hostility toward Liam, even if he tried to hide it. When Ms. Radcliffe questioned him, Dean gave short, clipped answers. Mr. Weller stepped in to cover for Dean, deflecting any insinuation that the older boy was bullying the younger. But the final straw came when Ms. Radcliffe discovered that Liam's old injuries had never been thoroughly investigated. She took pictures of faint, older bruises on Liam's arms that looked consistent with grabs or pinches, not accidental bumps. She also unearthed a troubling pattern in the school's logs. Liam always misbehaved at the end of the week. Over time, a telling motif emerged. In the Wellers behavior chart, weekends were marked with red for Liam, with repeated notes that he had failed tasks or disrupted chores. Meanwhile, Dean's row was mostly green. It pointed to a dynamic where Liam was singled out or scapegoated. The tension soared when Ms. Radcliffe caught Dean glaring at Liam during her second visit. Though Dean tried to play it off, Liam's reaction, a stiffening of the shoulders and an averted gaze, spoke volumes. February rolled around and Mr. Coleman received a late evening phone call from Child Protective Services. We found sufficient grounds to remove Liam from the Weller home, pending a more thorough investigation. Relief flooded Mr. Coleman's body at the news, tempered by the knowledge that removal would be traumatic in its own right. Liam, after all, had been through multiple foster placements already, each one promising safety but often falling short. That same call informed Mr. Coleman that the Wellers would lose their foster license if the claims were substantiated. When Liam arrived at school the next morning, he looked numb. He had learned earlier that day that CPS was coming in the afternoon to take him away. That meant leaving his current home, uncertain of where he'd end up next. Though he was unhappy there, the idea of being uprooted yet again took its toll. He wandered around the corridor listlessly, not even showing up to his morning classes. Out of concern, Miss Clark found him near the back stairwell, tears streaking silently down his cheeks. "Liam," she said gently, beckoning him to follow her. "Let's go see Mr. Coleman." He nodded without a fight. They walked in silence to the principal's office. Mr. Coleman stood when they entered, his face etched with concern. The look in Liam's eyes was a mixture of sorrow and relief. It spoke volumes. Yes, he was free from torment, but now he was also adrift. "I don't want to go through another home," Liam whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know what will happen next time." Mr. Coleman's heart twisted. He knew the feeling of helplessness that came when a child was shifted around like a piece of luggage. And he saw in Liam something that pressed a paternal chord in him. A quiet, bright kid who just needed stability, a firm hand to guide him but not harm him. The principal had known heartbreak in his own life, had worked with countless children who slipped through the cracks. In that moment, a seed of determination took root inside him. He would not stand by and watch Liam get lost in the system. That day, with a heavy heart, Mr. Coleman watched as 2 CPS workers came to pick Liam up right after last period. Liam clutched a worn backpack, head bowed, eyes darting with apprehension. As they walked down the hallway, a few curious students glanced over, some whispering. The hush of that corridor felt oppressive. Mr. Coleman stepped outside into the cold air to watch them drive away, the swirl of snow flurries dancing around the car. His mind spun with the knowledge that while Liam was out of immediate danger, the boy now faced a new uncertainty. In the next week, Mr. Coleman learned that Liam had been placed in a temporary group home. The phone calls that followed wove a tapestry of red tape. Mr. Coleman spoke to social workers, the agency that oversaw Liam's foster care, and even the local family court. Everyone recognized that Liam was a difficult placement due to his quiet demeanor, his history of anxiety, and his repeated relocations. Although the Wellers case was still under investigation, the final outcome seemed clear: they would never foster Liam again. But that did little to solve the immediate problem of where Liam would go long-term. In those long nights at home, Mr. Coleman found himself lying awake, Harriet beside him, thoughts tangled with worry about the boy's future. The memory of Liam's defeated gaze when he said he didn't want another home resonated in Mr. Coleman's head. He recalled Liam's constant longing to stay at school, as if those hallways were more of a home to him than anywhere else. An unexpected idea crept in, one that both excited and unnerved him. Harriet, noticing his restlessness, asked him what weighed so heavily on his mind. Tentatively, he explained his growing wish to help Liam in a personal capacity, maybe even as a foster parent. Harriet listened carefully, her eyes shining with empathy. She and Mr. Coleman had always talked about children, but they'd never been able to have any of their own. Life had gone on, and Mr. Coleman had devoted himself to the students at Sycamore Middle, giving them the paternal guidance he couldn't bestow on a child of his own. Harriet had poured her nurturing instincts into her volunteer work, local charities, and supporting her husband's career. Now, this possibility hung in the air, equal parts promise and challenge. Harriet pursed her lips, thinking it through. Then she said, "It's a big step, but I can't stand the thought of Liam drifting around either." Mr. Coleman reached for her hand. "He needs stability. He needs someone who knows him, who won't see him as just another case file." Harriet squeezed his hand back. "If we're going to do this, we have to be sure we can handle the emotional roller coaster. He's been through so much." Mr. Coleman nodded solemnly. "We need to see if it's even feasible. But I have to try." They spent the weekend discussing everything from finances to the emotional upheaval of fostering a child. Harriet had reservations, concerns about the complexities of fostering a student from Mr. Coleman's own school, about how the line between principal and parent would blur. Yet the more they talked, the more sense it made. The system was complicated, but Mr. Coleman's unwavering sense of responsibility toward Liam lit a path forward. So began a series of formal inquiries. Mr. Coleman reached out to the fostering agency. Questions were raised. Could a principal foster a child from his own school? Ethically, it wasn't typical but not impossible, provided certain guidelines were respected. The agency had to evaluate their home, run background checks, confirm Harriet was on board, make sure there were no conflicts of interest. It was a labyrinth of forms, interviews, and references, but the more the couple navigated it, the more determined they became. Meanwhile, Liam stayed in the group home, where he looked just as withdrawn as ever. The social worker, Ms. Radcliffe, allowed Mr. Coleman to visit occasionally, always in a supervised setting, since the child was technically in state care. Each time Mr. Coleman arrived, Liam's face lit up ever so slightly. They would talk about school, about which staff members asked about him. They talked about small, ordinary details that reminded Liam he wasn't forgotten. "How are you doing, Liam?" Mr. Coleman asked one day, noticing the dark circles under the boy's eyes. Liam shrugged. "It's okay, I guess. Better than over there." He didn't say the Weller name, but Mr. Coleman knew what he meant. "Any trouble with other kids?" Mr. Coleman probed carefully. Group homes weren't always safe havens. Some older ones pick on the younger ones, but it's not as bad as Dean, Liam replied softly. He fiddled with a thread on his sweater. "I can handle it." Mr. Coleman wished he could sweep the boy out of that group home right then, bring him to a place that felt warm and secure. But he knew the process had to unfold properly. He also knew that caution was paramount. He had to be sure that it was truly in Liam's best interest to move in with him and Harriet. In the next few weeks, Mr. Coleman faced pushback from some corners, whispers among certain staff and parents that it was unorthodox for a principal to foster a student. Some questioned his motivations, insinuating that he might be seeking positive public attention. Mr. Coleman brushed those insinuations aside. He had never once sought the spotlight, and truth be told, he would have preferred to keep it quiet. This was about Liam, not accolades. Thankfully, the majority of the community supported him. Sycamore Middle staff, those who had seen Liam's plight firsthand, rallied behind the principal. Many recognized that if anyone could provide a stable environment for Liam, it was Mr. Coleman. Child Protective Services proceeded with additional checks. They were initially cautious about the dynamic. How would Mr. Coleman balance discipline at school if Liam lived under his roof? A couple of meetings later, the social workers saw that Harriet was prepared to be a primary parental figure while Mr. Coleman maintained professional boundaries at school. And they saw the sincerity burning in the couple's eyes. Finally, just as the last of the winter snow melted into slushy puddles, the authorization came through. Mr. Coleman and Harriet would be approved as Liam's foster family. The day Mr. Coleman got the call, he was in the middle of checking on lunch duty. He stepped into a quiet corridor to answer his cell phone. When the social worker confirmed the placement, an overwhelming sense of relief coursed through him. He slid his phone back into his pocket, exhaled, and felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. After so many months of worry and hoping to give Liam a real chance, it was happening. That afternoon, Mr. Coleman went to the group home. He had to pick Liam up, paperwork in hand, to bring him to his new home. When Liam saw him, wearing a coat with pockets stuffed with official forms, he looked confused. Then the social worker explained that Mr. Coleman had been approved to be his foster parent. Liam's eyes widened. "You're serious?" he asked in a voice tinged with disbelief. Mr. Coleman gave a small nod. "If you want it, it's your choice, Liam." He expected hesitation, maybe a flicker of worry that living with his principal might be odd. Instead, Liam nodded almost instantly, tears welling in his eyes. "Yes, yes, I do." The ride to Mr. Coleman's home was quiet, punctuated by Liam's occasional glances out the window at the passing suburban neighborhoods. Harriet greeted him at the door with a warm smile and a tray of homemade chocolate chip cookies. She guided him inside, showing him his new room. It was modest, with a bed, a small dresser, and a bookshelf. They hadn't wanted to impose a fully decorated space on him, preferring to let him choose how to make it his own. Yet they did place a small chessboard on the side table, a subtle invitation to a shared interest. Liam's eyes lit up slightly when he saw it. He didn't say much, only a quiet "thank you," but the gratitude was clear in his voice. The new arrangement began awkwardly, as any dramatic change does. Liam was reserved, his guard still up. At dinner, Harriet asked him how he liked school projects, and he responded in one-word answers. Mr. Coleman sensed that Liam was trying to figure out what sort of household this was. Where were the traps, the punishments, the unstoppable bullies? He was used to walking on eggshells, so it would take time to learn that he could breathe freely here. Slowly but steadily, trust began to grow. At school, Mr. Coleman remained the principal, but he tried to act around Liam just as he did with every student, fair, measured, and ready to encourage. He avoided giving Liam any special treatment. If Liam needed discipline, though it was unlikely now that he was no longer trying to stay after school, Mr. Coleman would defer to Ms. Alvarez or other administrative staff to handle the details, just to keep the lines from blurring too much. But truth be told, in the weeks following his move, Liam no longer racked up infractions. Instead, he signed up for the chess club, which met every Thursday after school. He joined an after-school reading group that Ms. Clark ran. Fridays stopped being ominous for him, and he no longer walked around with that anxious tension etched into his face. One evening, Harriet found a quiet moment to chat with Liam as they did the dishes together. "I saw your chessboard all set up," she ventured. "Do you need a partner to play with?" Liam gave a small smile. "I usually just play against myself or practice strategies. But, yeah, I'd like a partner." "Well, I'm hopeless at chess, but your principal." She paused with a playful grin. "I guess I can't call him that at home, can I? Mr. Coleman's pretty good at chess, but he might not be up for losing. Maybe we'll both learn from you." Liam laughed softly, a sound Harriet had rarely heard from him. It held genuine amusement. "I could teach you if you want," he offered. "There are some clever moves. I like thinking ahead." Harriet patted his shoulder, heartwarming. "We'd love that." That simple exchange sparkled with possibility, a sign that Liam was beginning to relax, to trust. In the weeks that followed, the house began to echo with small, normal routines. Harriet cooking while Liam set the table, Mr. Coleman joining a short chess session after dinner. They watched TV or sometimes just talked about the day. Each evening, mundane though it was, seemed to wrap Liam in a comforting sense of belonging. Yet the specter of the Weller family hadn't vanished entirely. The investigation was ongoing, and there were still legal matters to sort out regarding Liam's permanent placement. Some nights, Liam had nightmares. Harriet would find him trembling in his bed or pacing the hallway. At first, he wouldn't talk about them, but eventually he admitted that he dreamt about Dean chasing him, cornering him in a dark hallway. He would jolt awake with the fear that no one was there to save him. Mr. Coleman sat with him on a couple of those nights, quietly telling him that no one in this house would ever hurt him like that. Spring blossoms began to appear around town, and with them came a shift in Liam's demeanor. He had gone from a tense, guarded boy to someone who smiled timidly, who found reasons to linger in conversations, who started to make friends at school. Mr. Coleman was gratified, but also cautious. He knew recovery from trauma was never a straight line. The principal tried not to hover too much at school, letting Liam navigate middle school life with his peers. Then, one day near the end of March, a curious thing happened. Liam asked if he could visit the Weller home once, to get some of his remaining belongings. Mr. Coleman's eyes narrowed with concern. "We can arrange with the social worker to have them send your things here," he said gently. "You don't need to go back." Liam swallowed. "I know, but they said I still have a few books and clothes. Stuff they say belongs to me, but I need to pick it up. CPS said it's my choice. I think I need to face it." Mr. Coleman studied Liam's face, glimpsing a steely resolve. Part of him wanted to shield the boy from ever having to see that place again, but he also understood the importance of closure. "We'll do it the right way," Mr. Coleman said. "You won't go alone. I'll speak with the social worker." And so, one crisp Saturday morning, Mr. Coleman drove Liam to the Weller house under the watchful supervision of a CPS representative. Mr. Weller answered the door, looking thinner and more harried than before. There was no sign of Dean. He was likely staying elsewhere or simply avoiding the scene. Mr. Coleman didn't utter a word of greeting, letting the social worker handle the formalities. Liam walked in, head held higher than usual. He retrieved a small box of books and a couple of items of clothing from his old bedroom. The tension in the hallway felt thick, but not once did Mr. Coleman let Liam out of his sight. Mr. Weller stood aside, silent, stony-faced, perhaps aware that his reputation had been tarnished by the investigation. With each step Liam took through the house, he seemed to reclaim a piece of himself, no longer the frightened foster child who cowered in corners. Back in the car, Liam clutched the box on his lap. He was silent for a long time. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "Thank you for coming with me. I wanted to show myself I'm not trapped there anymore." Mr. Coleman nodded, proud of the boy's courage. "You aren't," he said simply. "Not now, not ever again." In the aftermath, Liam seemed lighter, as if he had fully shed the last clinging fear from that toxic environment. Spring at Sycamore Middle found him thriving. He placed second in a local youth chess tournament, surprising even himself. He started opening up more, forging a couple of close friendships with kids who shared his interests in reading and strategy games. Mr. Coleman maintained a watchful but respectful distance at school, letting Liam flourish on his own terms. Still, some tension lingered in the background, the potential trial or hearing regarding the Wellers' foster care license. The swirl of legal processes meant that Liam might have to testify or at least give a statement regarding his experiences. Each time the possibility was brought up, Liam's face grew solemn, though he agreed to it because he understood it could protect future foster kids from suffering the same intimidation. Mr. Coleman and Harriet assured him they would support him through it, whatever form it took. The turning point arrived in late April, when the local family court summoned the Wellers to a hearing. Child Protective Services intended to lay out evidence that Dean had tormented Liam, and Mr. Weller had neglected to intervene. Though it wasn't a criminal trial, Dean was a minor, after all. It was serious enough to strip the Wellers of their foster license permanently and possibly lead to fines or mandated counseling. Liam was asked to give a statement describing what had happened in that house, specifically about Dean's bullying and Mr. Weller's failure to protect him. The prospect rattled Liam, but he refused to back down. One afternoon, Harriet and Mr. Coleman rehearsed the court process with Liam at their kitchen table. "The judge will ask you to explain, in your own words, some of the incidents with Dean," Harriet said gently. "If you need a break, you can ask for one." Liam fidgeted, eyes downcast. "What if Dean's there?" Mr. Coleman put a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You don't have to face him alone. We'll be right there, and there will be legal professionals, a social worker. They won't let him intimidate you." Liam nodded, inhaling slowly. "I guess I always felt like no one would believe me. It's weird to think that people are actually listening now." "They are," Mr. Coleman confirmed, his voice calm yet fervent. "And once you tell them the truth, it will help protect others too." In the following days, Liam's anxiety surged. He had nightmares again. He chewed his nails nervously, and his concentration dipped at school. Mr. Coleman tried to remain neutral as a principal, though inside he felt paternal worry gnawing at him. Ms. Clark gently reminded Liam to take deep breaths whenever he felt overwhelmed. Ms. Alvarez offered quiet support, letting him sit in her office at lunch if he needed a moment. The entire staff seemed to band together around Liam, a testament to how much they cared about him and how outraged they were by the neglect he had suffered. The day of the hearing finally arrived. Mr. Coleman took a personal day off from school so he could accompany Liam. Harriet came as well, her arm wrapped protectively around the boy's shoulders. The courthouse was a drab building, its corridors echoing with the shuffle of attorneys and the hushed murmurs of people waiting for their cases. Liam sat stiffly in a plastic chair outside the hearing room, gripping Mr. Coleman's hand tightly. When they were called inside, he rose, trying his best to steel himself. The hearing itself was less dramatic than Liam had feared, though it had its tense moments. The CPS attorney presented the results of the investigation, the behavior charts, the suspicious bruises, the repeated instances of Liam seeking refuge at school, statements from teachers who had observed signs of distress. Mr. Weller, looking pale, tried to maintain that he had done nothing intentionally harmful. He claimed ignorance about Dean's hostility, painting it as boyish roughhousing that got out of hand. Dean himself was sullen, forced to stand with his own attorney, as the hearing was a matter of foster home safety rather than a direct criminal proceeding. He avoided looking at Liam. When Liam finally took the stand, guided by the sympathetic judge and the CPS attorney, he spoke in a tremulous voice. He described Dean's bullying, the pinches, the cornering, the nasty threats. He mentioned how any protest he made was brushed aside by Mr. Weller, who insisted it was normal sibling stuff. He explained how the color-coded chart was used to track even the smallest infractions on weekends, turning his Saturdays and Sundays into a constant state of dread. "I was scared," he said, voice wavering, "and no one seemed to care. Mr. Weller just told me to toughen up." The most heartbreaking detail came when Liam admitted that the repeated detentions at school were his way of finding safety. "At least at school," he said, tears brimming, "I didn't have to worry about Dean. I didn't have to worry about having no place to hide." As Liam's words filled the courtroom, Mr. Coleman felt a lump in his throat. He knew it was painful for the boy to relive these moments. Harriet quietly dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The judge listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Dean and Mr. Weller. When Liam finished, the judge thanked him for his testimony, acknowledging how difficult it must have been. Liam returned to his seat, and Mr. Coleman squeezed his shoulder, whispering, "I'm proud of you." Dean was questioned as well, though he mostly deflected or gave minimal answers. Mr. Weller's defense tried to claim that the red marks on the chart were strictly for chores, not punishments, but the evidence painted a different picture. After a few hours of back and forth, the judge called for a brief recess, and everyone filed out into the hallway. Tension was thick in the air. Mr. Coleman guided Liam away from the Wellers, ensuring there would be no hostile confrontation. Back in session, the judge handed down a decisive ruling: the Weller family's foster license would be revoked, citing failure to protect a minor from emotional and physical harm. The judge also mentioned that further steps might be taken to ensure that Dean received counseling, possibly mandated through juvenile services if the bullying had crossed into assault territory. Mr. Weller's face went ashen. Liam stared at the floor, shoulders trembling with a mixture of relief and residual fear. Outside the courtroom, as they prepared to leave, Liam spotted Dean for a moment down the hall. Their eyes locked briefly. Dean's expression was unreadable, perhaps a mix of anger and regret. Liam looked away, not wanting to engage. Mr. Coleman and Harriet shielded him. The social worker, Ms. Radcliffe, stepped in to guide them out of the building safely. The well of relief that followed was enormous. The threat of the Wellers was now legally nullified, at least in terms of fostering. Over the next few days, the official news swept through Sycamore Middle's staff quietly. The hearing had ended with a victory for Liam. Another teacher from Liam's old school, Ms. Jefferson, phoned the principal's office to celebrate the outcome, relieved that her own concerns had finally been heard. Mr. Coleman felt a sense of vindication but also recognized that this was just one step in Liam's long journey toward healing. In the weeks that followed, the tension that had once defined Liam's life began to fade. At home, Harriet noticed that Liam slept better, nightmares becoming less frequent. He seemed more at ease, more willing to joke around. Once, she caught him humming while he arranged the pieces on the chessboard. At school, he no longer sidled by the lockers with hunched shoulders. He walked with a measured, if still cautious, confidence. A subtle transformation that spoke volumes about what safety and stability could do for a child's spirit. He also continued to bond with a small circle of friends, including a boy named Jonah and a girl named Tasha who were as enthusiastic about books and board games as he was. They formed a lunch table that glowed with lively chatter, sometimes about fantasy novels, sometimes about the intricacies of chess maneuvers. Mr. Coleman watched from a distance, heart-warming at the sight of Liam smiling, engaging in normal adolescent banter. The change was dramatic, a testament to resilience. One afternoon near the end of the school year, Mr. Coleman found Liam on the front steps, waiting for a ride home. Usually, Harriet picked him up, but she was running late from an errand. Mr. Coleman plopped down next to him, glancing at the sky. "Feels like summer's almost here," he said lightly. Liam nodded, a gentle breeze ruffling his hair. "Yeah, I was thinking about taking that summer reading challenge Ms. Clark mentioned. And maybe I can practice more chess for next year's tournament." Mr. Coleman smiled. "That's a great idea." They chatted about plans for the coming break. Liam asked if Harriet and Mr. Coleman had any vacations lined up. Mr. Coleman shrugged. "We were thinking of a small road trip, but we wanted to see if you'd be interested. We might visit a couple of historical towns, maybe check out a museum or two. We'd love for you to come if you want." Liam's cheeks flushed with surprise. "Really? You want me to go with you, like, as a family?" Mr. Coleman's chest ached with a mix of compassion and sadness. The word family had such loaded meaning for Liam. "Yes, as a family," he said gently, "if you're comfortable with that." For a moment, Liam said nothing. Then he nodded, gaze turning bright with emotion. "I'd like that. I've never really had that kind of trip before." Mr. Coleman patted his shoulder. "Well, it's never too late to start building good memories." That conversation felt like the dawn of a new era for Liam. Soon, the final weeks of school whirred by in a blur of exams, final assemblies, and year-end celebrations. Despite the chaos, Mr. Coleman carved out time to finalize the next steps in Liam's placement. The court had granted him extended foster rights, with the possibility of adopting Liam down the road if all parties agreed. Harriet and Mr. Coleman were ready to do whatever it took, but they also respected that Liam might have complicated feelings about adoption. For now, they were happy to provide him a secure home, while letting him set the pace of the future. The day after school let out for summer, a small celebration took place in the Coleman household. Harriet cooked Liam's favorite dish, spaghetti with extra cheese, and baked a chocolate cake. After dinner, they pulled out the chessboard. Mr. Coleman and Harriet attempted a tag team match against Liam, though it quickly became clear that Liam's strategic mind outmatched both of them. He snatched their pieces left and right, explaining the logic behind his moves. They laughed and teased each other about who was the weaker player. Harriet joked that they should probably switch to a simpler board game if they had any hope of beating him. Somewhere in the middle of that laughter, Liam paused, glancing at Mr. Coleman and Harriet with a shy smile. "Thank you," he said softly. "For everything." "Always," Harriet replied, her voice thick with emotion. Mr. Coleman nodded, returning that smile. In that moment, it felt like a family more than anything else. The house that had once been just a quiet space for two adults now echoed with the presence of a growing boy, forging new patterns of warmth and connection. As the summer stretched on, they did take that road trip, a modest drive through scenic backroads, visiting small museums, local diners, and even a tiny festival in a neighboring county. Liam snapped photos on an old digital camera Mr. Coleman let him borrow, capturing silly moments of Harriet posing with historical markers, or Mr. Coleman reading from a guidebook with exaggerated seriousness. The joy in Liam's face was evident in those pictures, each snapshot a testament to a life that no longer revolved around fear. Midway through the trip, they paused at a quaint bed and breakfast near a lake. Liam ventured along the shore, skipping rocks. Mr. Coleman joined him, hands tucked in his jacket pockets. "Feel good to be out here, away from everything?" Mr. Coleman asked, taking in the calm waters. Liam nodded, focusing on a flat stone in his hand. "Yeah, it does," he replied. He flung the rock across the surface. It skimmed 3 times before sinking. "Sometimes I still think about how it used to be, the house, Dean, all that. But it feels far away now." Mr. Coleman gazed at him. "Memories fade. What you went through will always be part of your story, but it doesn't have to define you." Liam cast another rock, his posture relaxed. "Yeah, that's what Miss Alvarez said too. I think, maybe I believe it now." For a while, they just stood there, the lapping waves against the shore offering a soothing rhythm. Eventually, Liam turned to Mr. Coleman, eyes shining with an almost fierce sincerity. "I want to keep living with you and Harriet," he said bluntly. "I don't want to go to another foster home or get bounced around. I just want to stay." Mr. Coleman felt a tightness in his throat. "We'd like nothing more than that," he said, voice unsteady. "We can take it step by step, and if you ever want to formalize it, we'll be there." Liam smiled, tension easing from his face. They headed back up to the bed and breakfast, where Harriet was sipping tea on a small porch swing. The 3 of them chatted into the evening, quietly enjoying the simple magic of shared companionship, free from fear. Summer ended, and a new school year began at Sycamore Middle. Liam started 8th grade, no longer the timid boy sneaking around corners. He entered the building with the normal blend of excitement and nerves that any student felt on the first day. Mr. Coleman welcomed the incoming students at the front doors, greeting them with cheerful directions to their homerooms. He exchanged a quick smile with Liam, but let the boy merge into the crowd of fellow 8th graders. Inside, Ms. Clark, Ms. Alvarez, and the other staff who knew Liam's story beamed with quiet pride at how far he had come. As the weeks rolled on, the legal complexities tied to his foster status moved steadily toward a more permanent resolution. The final hearing for the Wellers resulted in no possibility of them regaining their license. Dean was mandated to attend anger management and therapy. Meanwhile, the question of Liam's permanent placement hung in the air. It was at that juncture that Harriet gently raised the prospect of adoption with Liam, reminding him that there was no pressure. She explained that in their eyes, he was already family. They just wanted him to know that the door was open whenever he was ready to walk through it. Liam took time to think about it. At first, he was hesitant. The idea of changing his name, of fully committing to a new family, felt overwhelming. Then, one crisp autumn day, he stood in the living room with Mr. Coleman and Harriet. He told them that, yes, he wanted to move forward. He wanted to be a permanent part of their lives, to finally have a real family he could count on. Harriet teared up, and Mr. Coleman pulled Liam into a gentle hug. "It won't always be perfect," Mr. Coleman murmured. "We're all still learning. But we'll face everything together." "That's all I want," Liam whispered. They celebrated quietly that night with takeout pizza and a new board game Harriet had found, something about world exploration. Liam was the first to navigate the tricky set of instructions. The conversation drifted from the mundane to the heartfelt, each moment precious in its normalcy. If someone had told Liam a year ago that he would be sitting in his principal's living room, laughing over a silly board game and discussing adoption, he would have thought it impossible. Yet here he was, forging a future that was finally free from constant fear. The official adoption process would still take time, but a sense of calm enveloped the Coleman household. The conflict that had once dominated Liam's life, fear of Dean, the stress of the Weller home, had receded into a memory. In its place stood a budding sense of security, trust, and belonging. Liam threw himself into his new routines, studying for his classes, excelling in chess club, and forging stronger friendships. Toward the end of that year, the school hosted a winter talent show. Liam, much to everyone's surprise, signed up to do a brief chess demonstration on stage, explaining a famous grandmaster's strategy to an audience of curious students and parents. He even answered questions from the crowd, showing confidence that had been absent when Mr. Coleman first encountered him. Afterward, Harriet gushed about how brilliant he was, and Mr. Coleman teased him about how many times he'd personally lost to him. Walking out to the parking lot, Liam caught sight of a younger student who looked anxious and alone. The student clutched a folded slip of paper, some kind of permission form. Liam paused, recognized the timid posture, and offered the kid a small smile. It was a reflection of empathy, The understanding that sometimes a small gesture of kindness can mean everything. Liam pointed the kid toward the correct room, and the young boy nodded, relieved. Mr. Coleman observed the interaction from a few steps away, heart swelling with pride. In that moment he saw Liam more, not as a frightened child, but as a mentor in the making, someone who had come out the other side of darkness and was now ready to help others find their way. In the final resolution of it all, the Wellers never returned to Sycamore Middle. They disappeared from Liam's life for good, except for the occasional bureaucratic notice or leftover piece of mail. The system did its job, halting them from fostering any more children. Dean's mandated therapy continued. No one expected a sudden transformation, but at least the cycle of intimidation would not continue under the same roof Liam once had to endure. The day the adoption was finalized, it was a simple courthouse gathering. No big speeches, just paperwork, a signature, and a solemn vow of commitment. Mr. Coleman and Harriet stood on either side of Liam as the judge verified the legalities. Liam looked smaller than usual in the big wooden courtroom, but when the moment came to pronounce him officially part of the Coleman family, the joy in his eyes shone like a beacon. Walking out into the corridor, Harriet wrapped her arms around Liam, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. Mr. Coleman stood there, momentarily speechless with emotion, before placing a hand on Liam's shoulder. The boy smiled broadly. Together, they stepped into the day's sunlight, forging a new and final beginning. Life didn't magically become perfect. Liam still battled the echoes of fear, the occasional nightmares, the sense of doubt that lurked in the corners of his mind. But with Harriet and Mr. Coleman by his side, those fears gradually lost their power. When he faltered, they supported him. When he soared, they cheered. Slowly, the definition of family transformed from a distant concept to a tangible reality. At Sycamore Middle, Mr. Coleman carried on as principal, proud but humble. He never waved around the story of Liam's adoption as a banner. Some people knew, some didn't. Liam was simply another student, albeit one with a story of resilience. In quiet moments, the principal would reflect on how close Liam had come to slipping through the cracks, another child lost in the system. He was grateful that his instincts had led him to dig deeper, to challenge appearances, to demand the truth behind small signs of distress. It had made all the difference in the world. Now, there were no more detention slips on Fridays. Instead, Liam's schedule was filled with after-school chess club, occasional study group sessions, and weekend outings with Harriet and Mr. Coleman. The shadows that had once darkened Liam's weekends were replaced by the bright promise of new experiences. A picnic in the park, a Saturday matinee at the local theater, or simply quiet reading time at home with Harriet's homemade snacks. In a serene moment one afternoon, Liam sat in his new bedroom, now decorated with posters of famous chess players, a few pictures of scenic locales from their road trip, and a shelf overflowing with books. He was scribbling in a journal, something Ms. Clark had encouraged him to keep. Its pages were filled with thoughts, both hopeful and haunting. He wrote about how it felt to trust people again, how it felt to stand up in court and speak his truth, and how grateful he was to no longer be stuck in that endless cycle of fear. Across the hall, Mr. Coleman peeked in, knocking lightly on the doorframe. "Hey, mind if I come in?" Liam nodded, setting aside his journal. Mr. Coleman entered, noting how the room had transformed into a comfortable space that truly felt like Liam's own. "You need anything for tomorrow? Big chess meet, right?" "Just some luck," Liam joked softly. "But I think I'll do all right." Mr. Coleman grinned, stepping closer. "You'll do great," he said, then paused. "You know, Harriet and I are proud of you. Really proud." Liam's cheeks flushed. "I appreciate that." Mr. Coleman felt a surge of fondness, a paternal wave of pride that he once feared he'd never experience. "We'll be there, cheering you on," he promised. "Front row seats." "Just don't be too loud," Liam teased, a small smirk playing on his lips. Mr. Coleman laughed. "Deal." He retreated, leaving Liam to his writing. But the moment lingered in the air, a testament to how far they had come, from the day Mr. Coleman had first noticed that strange gleam of relief in a detention-bound boy's eyes, to this day, when that boy felt safe enough to tease him about cheering too loudly. And so life continued, shaped by new routines and anchored in mutual trust. Liam learned that the world, though imperfect, contained adults who would fight tooth and nail to protect a child. Mr. Coleman learned that stepping beyond one's role, when guided by genuine compassion, could be the difference between despair and salvation for a vulnerable child. Harriet discovered that she had endless capacity to nurture and love, even when she hadn't planned for motherhood in the traditional sense. In time, the memory of the Weller household receded into the distance. It became a cautionary tale Liam kept in mind whenever he saw another student struggling. He found himself offering quiet words of support to classmates who faced their own hardships. Some dealt with parents who fought, others with personal insecurities. Though he was still healing, he felt a stirring desire to ensure that nobody else ever felt as trapped as he once had. This sense of empathy grew more potent each day. By the time Liam graduated Sycamore Middle and moved on to high school, the story of his old life felt almost like a dream, one full of shadows that no longer had a hold on him. In high school, he excelled in academics, joined the debate club alongside the chess club, and started to envision a future that involved helping others, maybe as a teacher, a counselor, or even a lawyer who fought for children's rights. He wasn't sure yet, but the possibilities were limitless. Mr. Coleman watched this from the vantage point of a proud father, occasionally marveling at how quickly time flowed. Years down the line, if anyone asked Liam about his family, he would recount, with a soft smile, how he was adopted by the principal of his middle school. Some would arch eyebrows in surprise, others would lean in with curiosity. He rarely delved into the details of the Weller household. But if pressed, he would say, "They didn't treat me right, and when someone finally noticed, he saved me from that place." That someone was Mr. Coleman, no longer just the principal, but the dad who taught him that weekends could be something to look forward to, that a parent's discipline could be loving rather than cruel, and that the world could be made safer, one person at a time. And in Mr. Coleman's quieter moments, when the sun was setting over the suburban rooftops, he often recalled the day he first met Liam. He would reflect on all the small signs that seemed insignificant on paper: minor rule-breaking, detention slips, bruises explained away by flimsy excuses. He realized how easily those signs could have been overlooked in a busy school system. Each time, he felt a profound sense of gratitude that he hadn't turned a blind eye, that he'd asked the right questions and taken the right steps. After all, it meant a child's future had shifted from fear to hope. If you made it this far, thank you for listening to this story of quiet struggles, hidden truths, and the unwavering determination to protect what matters. If you believe that every child deserves a safe home, consider liking and subscribing for more stories that shine a light on hope and resilience. Thanks for watching.